Content warning. This video will discuss themes of drug and alcohol abuse, mental disorder and suicide. If these subjects are troubling for you, please heed this warning before proceeding. Thank you. In this video, we're going to be offering a primer on one of the most exciting hip-hop artists coming up right now, the Canada-based auteur known as Backxwash. Born and raised in the South Central African nation of Zambia, she moved to Montreal as an adult to pursue greater freedom of personal and artistic expression. Over the past 2 years, she has captivated countless listeners with her two most recent albums, even winning the esteemed Polaris Music Prize for her 2020 album, God Has Nothing to Do With This, Leave Him Out of It. That's a pretty incredible feat on its own, let alone the fact that this album is full of uncleared samples that make it impossible to release officially. A year later, she followed up that album with the just as good, if not better, I Lie Here Buried with My Rings and My Dresses, marking the second album in a trilogy which is to see completion in 2022. There are a couple of other projects from Backxwash lurking around on Bandcamp, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to be focusing on breaking down and singing the praises of these two albums in particular. I talked about God Has Nothing a bit in our top 20 albums of 2020 video, so I won't go as much into that one in this video to avoid repeating myself. Still, this album more than deserves the prize it earned, with it packing a huge punch in its 22 punishing minutes of runtime. The album opens with its title track, flipping a harrowing sample from Black Sabbath's classic eponymous album opener from 1970. It stands to reason that this sample is a big reason why you can't buy this album. You can only download it for free, making it more of a mixtape. Still, I would hope that this inclusion feels completely worth it for Backxwash herself, as it presents one of the most attention-grabbing opening moments to a hip-hop album in the last several years. The ominous atmosphere conjured by Ozzy Osbourne's demented screams is matched by the song's sole verse. Backxwash's lyrics on this opening song are very disturbed, seeming to indicate a pretty unsustainable mental condition. As she raps, "It takes me back to almost jumping off the ceiling, while pumped on all the pills and almost lunging off the building. Mama keep telling me to ask the Lord for forgiveness. I want war with these. I want corpses and weapons." Her internal struggle with religious faith, coupled with her disdain for lack of acceptance from her family, seem to be the main fuel behind the fast-burning flame that is this album, and this is just a 2-minute opening track. Now, you saw what this video is called, and you may be wondering about all this rap metal business. Yes, rap metal is a maligned bastard formation that has largely resulted in a lot of music that could be wiped off the face of the planet for all I care, but the fusion of metal music and hip-hop is not a completely bankrupt idea, and I want to posit the idea that Backxwash is actually delivering a new spin on this typically cringe sonic fusion. You'll find a lot of the same markers on this album that you would on most metal albums, including harsh vocals and distorted guitars. It also just happens to be mostly centered around Backxwash's lyrical talent as performed through rap verse. If you still aren't convinced, try track 2, Black Magic. This one features some heavy guitar riffing from Ada Rook, who adds a really special ingredient to the song as it builds and builds. I should also say that Backxwash produced this entire album herself, apart from the interludes, which feature guest productions. Still, she provided the core production on this album, and the one we'll talk about next, so props where they're due for a skilled rapper-producer. Black Magic is probably the quintessential Backxwash song, with its explosive chorus and thick droning guitar embellishments. The song dwells a bit further into feelings of negativity and self-hatred, mentioning a deceased uncle mere seconds before proclaiming that demons are performing an act on her. She said later that this was written in a pretty dark place, and well, yeah, that seems clear. Regardless, this song channels a person's worst negative impulses into a driving, forceful song about leaning on darkness and evil energy in difficult times. Now, I know that this is a channel mostly about hip-hop, and we haven't quite branched into metal music yet. Don't worry, we'll get there. But let's just say for now that metal can be an attitude, removed from a sonic borderline similar to punk. See the song Black Sheep, which sonically bears no resemblance to metal music as we've discussed it thus far. The song's wild beat is based on a sample of Guliwakumlu ceremony performed by the Chua tribe. Backxwash is half Chua, half Tumbukua. This ceremony is described as symbolic of an evil spirit. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty metal to me. I could carry on mentioning songs like the obliterative Into the Void or the Led Zeppelin sampling Adolescence, but instead I think I'm going to turn my attention toward I Lie Here Buried With My Rings and My Dresses. This album came out a little over a year after God Has Nothing and is quite a bit longer at 33 minutes. It also features some of Backxwash's first major collaborations with other producers, particularly noise rap group Clipping and the Philly-based alt-metal band Code Orange. If it's possible, this was an even harder, heavier album than its predecessor, and a definite musical highlight for this year. After a warped intro, the album kicks into immediate overdrive with Wail of the Banshee. If you were hoping that things had improved psychologically for our subject, well, look out for some of the lyrics on this song. Look in the mirror, it's telling me I should kill something, so in the midst I can't handle how I'm feeling, try to jump, but I always land by hanging from a ceiling. Yeah, not seeming to be in the best place mentally on this one either. This mood is built upon by the distorted drone and hellish screams that compose the instrumental palette of this song. Again, a truly intense, macabre way to open up an album, but this has basically become Backxwash's bread and butter. Things only ramp up from here. The title track is a full 5 minutes, which immediately makes it an outlier in a discography so far. This one also features the aforementioned Ada Rook, who shrieks and screams her way through the song's hook, in addition to providing an incredible guitar riff to the whole piece. It's an epic, multifaceted, industrial sludge rap opus of a song, tackling the issue of diaspora and the feeling of not being able to return to the place where you grew up, where your direct kin lives, and needing to pick up all those pieces. In the noisy, ferocious In Thy Holy Name, she rails against systems of colonial government, particularly Canada and the USA, in addition to dissing the institution of the English royal family, which bears vicariously down on Canada in a similar way as American foreign policy does. Finally, she calls out billionaire wealth-hoarding dragons for accelerating the planet's destruction, and you realize there is still so much more sonic punishment left to undertake from this oppressively loud and heavy album. Being a huge Clipping fan, I of course love Blood in the Water, which Jonathan and Bill produced after reaching out to her on Twitter. One thing that she has always been open about is her various musical influences, and if you're thinking that this lady sounds like a huge fan of Death Grips, Clipping, Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia, you would be absolutely correct per her own admission. While the strains of industrial hip-hop forged by those four artists definitely loom largely over Backxwash's sound, she would never be mistaken for any of them, and she is certainly doing much more than just copying their respective sounds. This is where influence perfectly coalesces with the right sort of artist for the job. I would love to dive into every song on this album, but we're out of time, so I'll mention one more song before concluding, and that song is called Nine Hells. This one was produced by Nowhere to Run, which is the burgeoning alias of Jamie Morgan and shade of the band Code Orange, who are also forging impressive new territory when it comes to metal music. This track features a lot of the qualities that have marked the album thus far: chugging, low-tuned guitars, streaming synthesizers, and drums that bore into your skull with urgent force. When these types of fusions are at their worst across time, neither the rapping nor the metallic components are remotely on par with high talent music. These problems are nowhere to be found on Backxwash's most recent few albums. I don't know if there is a future for this oft ridiculed subgenre. What I know for certain is that there is a future for Backxwash, and this probably won't be the last time she's discussed on this channel. Thank you for watching.